Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this first HoodMed Chat of the Fall, a community health focus with guests from WHYSaveALife Foundation to discuss health equity and cancer wellness and awareness and prevention for Black patients, and to talk to us about their health advocacy work serving these communities. My name is Dr. Neecey Hudson, Chair and Science Director of Hood Medicine Initiative.
I'm Jonathan White, co-founder and Director of Policy.
I'm Jamal Hudson, Regulatory Advisor for Hood Medicine.
Hood Medicine Initiative is a collective of scientists, physicians, hackers, and assorted geeks focused on addressing health disparities and improving access to care in Black and Brown communities.
HoodMed Chats, our signature event, is an effort to bring the expertise of healthcare professionals and others to these communities. Our goal is very simple: help us save us. I want to welcome our guests today. We're thrilled to have Niambi and Walter Harris from WHYSaveALife Foundation. Niambi is the director and external supplier QA-GMP at, is it Daiichi? Okay, Daiichi Sankyo, located in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. She's a proud graduate of North Carolina A&T, HBCU, where she earned her BS in chemistry and completed an MBA in supply chain and strategic management from Rutgers University. While raising money for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society to honor her fiance who lost his fight with acute myelogenous leukemia, she realized she had a larger calling. Niambi found the WHYSaveALife Foundation to increase the number of African Americans registered to the National Merit Donor Program. Not only does WHYSaveALife support the registry, they are pursuing legislation to cover the cost of umbilical cord blood collection and banking to help families who can't afford the procedure. We're excited to have them as partners and have been eagerly anticipating having you guys on to talk about your vital work. Welcome, Niambi and Walter.
Thank you.
I'm excited to welcome Hood Medicine's regulatory advisor, Jamal Hudson, to his first Hood Med Chat panel. Jamal completed a BA in criminal justice at Indiana State University and his JD at Indiana University School of Law. He currently works as a senior business advisor at Anthem. He is our expert on healthcare systems and provides legal counsel and compliance guidance to our organization, and also, incidentally, is the love of my life. So he's here to share his amazing story of bone marrow donation and how it changed our lives. So welcome to the chat.
Thank you very much.
Popping your cherry.
Right?
Gotta happen sooner or later, I guess. I'm very thankful for it to be a topic that is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, amen. So Niambi, can you share a little bit more about the journey that led you to this work?
Sure. So good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for your invite. It's been a pleasure talking with Neecey and Jamal and Mr. White up here to the left, John, these last several months. So it really started with my experience first with my mother, who was diagnosed with colon cancer. And it was a 4-year fight, that she eventually lost at the age of 59. And during that experience, when it came time, when she came out of remission for the second time, and we were looking for clinical trials, and I remember sitting there with her, as my father, we were at the Cancer Institute in Philadelphia, and the doctor said, while we have seen great results in Caucasian patients, we haven't seen much of the same results among African Americans. And I think that was, and mind you, I was a chemist in the lab, and I think that was one of my first moments of wow. So not only do we have enough challenges as African Americans, we can't even find clinical studies to help us fight for our life. And a disease that's been around long enough where there should have been an opportunity to find a clinical trial that would have helped her, the survival rate would increase their survival rate. So, and there was a lot of things. I also learned there's no compassion for the caregiver in this healthcare system, nor the patient. So there was a lot I learned through this process. And then 12 months later, about 12 to 18 months later, at the time, right, he was a very good friend. My fiance was diagnosed with leukemia. And what was interesting about that experience was when we went to the ER, the doctors spent hours to try and convince us it was sickle cell anemia. And if anybody knows anything about sickle cell anemia, both parents, typically you have to have both parents to have that trait and for it to activate, right? And, was on the phone with his parents, like, there's nobody in my family that has that. And it was a Black nurse, it was a Black male nurse that took his blood, and he looked at me and he said, I think I know what's wrong. I think it's a leukemic condition. I'm gonna talk to the doctors. This is hours and hours. And they went and took the test and found out it was leukemia. So, and that was just the journey of many things. And eventually he lost his fight because we couldn't find a match. Unfortunately, his sister wasn't the match we needed. And because of the low participation in the bone marrow registry at the time, so, I'm dating myself about 15, 20 years, we're talking about, although we couldn't find that match. And so I could not understand in the 21st century how we were still in this place, right? And of course, for all of us who attended HBCUs, we all well aware of the Tuskegee experiment. We're all well aware of what they did to those foster kids in New York with HIV. There's a lot of things we're aware of, and those things, from even Dr. I forgot his name, that developed the heart surgery that couldn't save his life back in the 60s. Well, right, I'm like, at this point, we're in the 2000s, so I'm trying to figure out what's happening. What I didn't understand, and I was young. And so after you go through this process of mourning and anger, finally you have to get to a space of, okay, God, I want to address this, right? You gave me this mouth, this communication skill. You had me study science, so how do I make this better? And it just took me to this journey where I ended up doing a triathlon with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And my teammates, I told them my story, and my teammates were like, you should start an organization, is what they said. You know how they go. And mind you, I was like the only Black girl in this training group at LLS. Oh, just start an organization. And I'm like, what? But what I realized was, if this journey from hearing everybody's story with LLS is that you got to start somewhere. So what happened was, after I did the race, a year later, so in 2011, I had my first bone marrow registry drive at the church I was belonging to at the time. And 10 or 11 African Americans registered for the bone marrow registry. And I was so disappointed. That's it? That's what I said to myself. That's all that registered. There's only 630,000 African Americans registered to a registry that has 6 million people, and only 10. That's all I can do, is what I said to myself. And the girl it was with Be the Match at the time, she came to me, she handed me this pen, and she goes, Niambi, you were such an inspiration. This is the most I've seen where African Americans have registered for the bone marrow registry, and you have to keep doing this work. And at that point, I had to shift out of my whatever space I was in, where I was upset with my community, and figure out a way to have this conversation around this topic. And so therefore, WHYSaveALife Foundation grew out of those moments. And we have been working within our community, talking about, how we can do better.
Niambi, I want to touch real quick on your fiance's misdiagnosis. Sometimes when we think of medical racism, we think about, Serena Williams not being believed when she's on the table, and, Black people not getting adequate pain meds because they think we're drug addicts. But in your fiance's situation, because he was Black, they assumed that his blood issue was sickle cell because Black people are prone to have sickle cell. Mm-hmm. And, he didn't get the proper treatment that he needed immediately because they were making assumptions rather than actually trying to treat him. And I can imagine this happens to so many people in this country, in ways where that misdiagnosis, or it's not even a misdiagnosis, that
It's not even, that's what I was about to say. It's not even a misdiagnosis because they obviously didn't do diagnostics
exactly
to confirm that. You can
that lack
confirm
of
that. You know what I mean? Like,
that lack of desire to even do the work, the minimum work required to figure out what is wrong with a Black person. That's also medical racism. It's something that continually affects us. So, you know, that was a remarkable story. And I just hope if there are other people out there who see this and they experience situations like that, that we can find a way to help them make sure that they get the care that they deserve and need. Walter, can you tell us a little bit about your background story with Why Save a Life?
Sure. First, a quick background story. You know, I grew up in Newark. I was son of civil servants, public servants. So, you know, helping or doing, helping with other people, you know, that's just in my blood. That's in my character. How I got started with Why Save a Life. Niambi was alluding to the story that I'm also a diabetic. And at the time, she was doing a bike ride to fundraise or raise money for diabetes, because her father's a diabetic. His name happens to also be Walter, right? So therefore, Team Walter's where it started. And I helped her raise money. I think we raised over, what, $1,500 at the time. And
it was 1,000.
Yeah, so that, you know, that was just an awesome time. And you know, from there, you know, she started sharing her story. Like, you know, one thing about the story is you have to be an enroller. Niambi's an enroller. And, you know, she started sharing her story about her mom and her fiance. So I also shared about my story about my dad who had bone cancer. And because he wasn't getting checked, you know, he wound up dying, and bone cancer comes quick, takes you out. And since he didn't have, you know, one of our things is start the conversation, he didn't have conversations about, you know, some of his medical ailments. And you know, like his dad had cancer, you know, then subsequently else, I had an uncle who just recently passed 2 years ago who had cancer. So guess what, right? So this is one of the reasons why we started the conversation. And after Niambi, you know, shared her story, it was like, well, you know, she started sharing about what she wanted to do with Why Save a Life. And I guess that's where the story began, about, you know, just helping others get into the community. You know, you think, you know, at one point, you know, you think, you know, Black people, especially myself and people I hung around, we didn't talk about cancer. It's just something we just didn't share. Yeah. Or we wanted to talk about it, you know, it happened. If we had people that was affected by it, you know, we say a prayer and we keep moving, right? But we don't know that there's another story to that of prevention of certain things, especially growing up in Newark. I know we were sharing a story where, you know, if you lived in the South Ward of Newark, that the airplanes, they fly over you, and, you know, fuel drops over you. And, you know, we talk about like preventative methods. Nobody cared about the fuel that was dropping over top of folks that's causing issues later on in life. And that's something that we're talking about. So, you know, Why Save a Life, like we say, our tagline is we start the conversation, we bridge the gap, and we want to, you know, beat this cancer one life at a time. So that's one of my background stories about Why Save a Life. And the mission is awesome. I mean, one of our missions is to sign up 100,000 African Americans or underserved communities in the National Bone Marrow Registry. Like Niambi alluded to, you know, 16 million people was in the Peter match. 5% of them is African Americans. It's like 800,000 people. 800,000 people. COVID took out more worldwide. 800,000 people. Yeah. So, you know, we have work to do.
So, like, when you guys first got into your research, when you started the org, were you surprised at the level of health inequity and cancer research and like diagnostics, treatment, all of that contributes?
You know, I wish I can tell you I was surprised. I wasn't.
I mean, because like when you see the stats, it's like really stark, right? You know what I mean? It's like not just like.
I wasn't surprised. What I was really angry around the fact that African Americans are diagnosed with cancer at the same rate as white Americans, but our death rate is higher in about every aspect of every cancer you can possibly think of. And it's frustrating because you know it's there. We know our families and any other, and as this pandemic has opened up the plethora, Pandora's box, whatever, whether it's cardiovascular disease, pulmonary disease, whatever it is, this is the health inequity in our communities, right? And some of it is within our community we have to take responsibility for, and some of it is how we are, how the medical community has treated us. So to answer your question, no, I wasn't surprised. I was disappointed. I was angry. I was frustrated because I know we can do better, right? We know, while I understand the mistrust within the community, we have to move past that, and we can do better. And so what I think, and what he alluded to, that I think we really need to understand the power of preventative medicine, right? And that within the community, you know, the emergency room is not your treatment, right? But, you know, by the time you get to the emergency room, it's really almost too late, right? And so, you know, one of the things we continue to, in our discussions, or what we talk about is, you know, how do we build the trust within the community so we can start building community or health centers, right? Which, and you're starting to see this pop out now, where you can, you know, monitor and treat and get, you know, get people comfortable of, you know, the naturopathic medicine, the conventional medicine, signs of what you look for, right? You know, don't sit in your house in pain until you cough up blood in your sink. Like, no, dude, as soon as your stomach hurts, let's have a conversation with somebody, and you make these choices. So, and it's hurtful. Like, you read that, when I started studying about blood cancers, and I was like, what? We're the same rate? And when you start seeing the death rates higher, and then you start digging some more, and then you see with Black women and breast cancer, and then you see that colon cancer and lung cancer is increasing in African Americans, and now myeloma is in the 65-year-old African American population. It becomes really just frustrating, right?
Walter, how does the lack of the continuity of care for Black patients, and therefore what leads into the lack of screening activities and opportunities that could prevent or contribute to a prevention of these diseases, how does that impact the awareness of these cancer risks?
Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Sure. How does the lack of a continuity of care for Black patients, how does that affect screening and the awareness of these cancer risks?
Right. So, you know, that's one of the major problems that we're facing, even in the, let's say, the clinical trial. One of the things is, you know, if we start one, we might not finish. Or if, you got to ask yourself a question, like, how many times do we visit the doctor a year, right? Or how many times, how many times have you seen your dentist in the last 2 years? And when you start to realize that, or how many times have we developed a plan with our healthcare provider to see us all the way through to whatever ailment, or we don't have a preventative method. And what happens is we get a quick fix and then we're finished. Or if, and that leads to the point of, medicines are not here, or doctors are not here to help us. You know, they're here to just make their money and they're going to keep us on drugs. No, we have to continue to continue our plan of action on how to make ourselves better. And that's not happening. I don't believe that's happening in our community. If we have an ailment and there's a quick fix for our ailment, we do that. It's like having a headache and taking an aspirin. We're not trying to see what was causing our headache. We just know that the headache is fixed because now we took Excedrin. Now, if you had a plan of action, like, oh, why did I have a headache? And you go to the doctor, oh, hey, we seen a little blood on the brain, or maybe hey, your heart rate is not right. Then they could develop a plan of action to just not just deal with the headache, deal with the total person. And so the lack of continuity is done because it's a few things. I mean, it's economics, we struggle with the how we want to pay, why we want to pay, or just the convenience of going to a doc.
So,
Go ahead.
So Walter, let me ask you, how does the past and our, I want to say culture, how does Black people's culture play into our lack of ability to have a sustainable methodology of getting care?
Couple of things. And I'm gonna use myself because I guess I'm part of it. I'm a diabetic at 35. My parents were diabetics, their parents were diabetics. That's 3 generations of diabetics. When I was growing up, I know a question might come up later, but I know when I was growing up, I was drinking these 50-cent sodas, like in the hood, right? Be drinking these sodas. And I wish somebody would have said, hey man, hey, you're a diabetic. Or your parents were diabetics. Hey, you might want to ease off of this. So our past, and I don't know how far you want to go back, if you want to go back to the ski experiments, or when you want to go back to where our mistrust with the health community started, or if that's where we're going. But then the mistrust with the health community, one thing, even now that we're dealing with the COVID, with the health issue that we had with the Tuskegee experiment, they wasn't giving us the medicine, let's say. They weren't treating us. And here now that we're getting treated, we have things in place, we have people in place, we're
safeguards.
Right, we have safeguards, we have other like now we're sitting at a table where we could almost help ourselves, so where our past won't repeat itself. And if we don't take parts in these clinical trials, if we don't ask our doctors, or like I said, create a plan, if we don't talk to them, we will repeat the past. However, we're now in a position where we could take the information we have and what we're doing, even the Hood Initiative and WHYSaveALife, and bring enlightenment and education to our people, so we won't have a past type of experience. From now we could live longer and better quality of life. That makes sense.
Yeah, so and I just want to step in for a second, because I think this is a really good example. I think this might be a good example to illustrate your question. Henrietta Lacks. I think she's a great example where this journey has been, how we got here, right? Now, I'm not sure if you know, but Henrietta Lacks' family and the WHO organization now has committed to eliminating ovarian cancer in the Black community around the world, right? So there was a couple of things there. So if anybody doesn't know a story, long story short, the woman came to the doctor because she was bleeding. She had cancers, and the doctors did experiments on her and took her cells. And that's why you have vaccines to this day, because of her cells, right? They call them the HL cells. And so how did we get here? Well, we used to go to the doctor to get healed, and instead we were used as experiments, right? This is how gynecology got started, on a Black woman that this doctor just opened up on the table, right? And for everybody saying, didn't, no painkillers, no anything. And the other part, right? So that's a great example. The other part is, we came to this country, when it came to like this soul food, right? And we were given scraps, and you want to make it better. Well, we made it better with the butter and the sugar, or, and so what happened is it's hard for us to let go of that, right? Or these things like, and I believe in the healing of herbs. Now, I am a believer that God has given us everything in this earth to heal everything, right? And people don't realize that medicine is a derivative of these herbs that we take. But
and what you mean by that is there's no divorce between, natural,
the natural, right, and what we know is conventional, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And the other part of that is, and we do things like when we used to get burned, hey baby, put some butter on that, as opposed to now, at least my mama taught me, right? So I think she came from that certain tribe in Africa where used the aloe vera plant, and the aloe vera plant does heal burns, right? So we've got to kind of change some of our mindset, right? Also, what's part of that is you got to ask yourself, why is it allowed in certain communities with so many fast food restaurants and liquor stores and bodegas? This is the food disparity, food inequities are allowed in certain communities, but I got a community up the street, you can't have no fast food. McDonald's, Burger King can't have a sign up. right? And so what happens is now you've got people addicted to sugar, you got people that's, you know, addicted to fast food and time, right? How do you break those chains in families when they say, remember, a lot of Black families are trying to survive, but all I got is $25 to make this work gravy, so I don't have money to buy all these vegetables or Whole Foods. No, you may not. And so what we've got to start teaching each other, you're right, some people don't have the funds to go to Whole Foods, but I know you can grow a garden.
Yeah. Yep. You know, it's funny, you know, one of the issues or the answers to that question, the other question is we got to start educating folks in our communities about advocating for themselves and advocating for their family members, right? Because we don't know how to do that. We typically fall into two camps. Either we don't trust medicine at all, and so we don't seek care, or we go there and we accept whatever, you know, a doctor tells us and never have the agency to challenge or ask questions or inquire further, because we feel some level of, you know, self-consciousness, our lack of education, and our lack of education and understanding of the material. And so we just basically go and whatever they say goes. We have to be, you know, more willing to ask questions, more willing to see other people and get other answers. We can't just accept that, you know, we're going to get the best care, you know, with somebody who doesn't really have interest in our better health. And on that note, you know, one of the things that, you know, a lot of work that we do at Hood Medicine is focused on public health education, science communications. So we're curious, for the bone marrow registration, for the work that you all do, how have you approached your messaging and advocating to our communities, and what hesitancies have you faced in getting people to sign up?
I just want to make sure, Neecey, you don't have a question or comment before I get into this question.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a couple of things. What has been interesting is that you will see it different in certain generations. So in the wiser, the more seasoned population, choose my words carefully, right? Let's say they'll donate money, but they're not going, you're not taking my bone, you ain't taking no swab, you ain't putting me, you ain't sticking on me, like, you know, there's a lot of that, okay? And then, but I noticed younger, they'd be like, oh, because they really don't have money, like, oh, we'll do it, you know, just let me know how to do it. And sometimes because of certain health issues, they can't, right? So there's also some generation things there. There are some religious things, you know, the Muslim population, you know, we're in the communities where there's a Muslim population, and because of religious reasons, they're not going to do swabs, but they might be able to volunteer. You know, we find that strategic way of how to talk about the preventive and other health issues, right? And a lot of it is the lack of knowledge. So I think, you know, Walter alluded to us, our motto is starting the conversation, bridging the gap, and beating cancer one life at a time. And so starting the conversation, we were in a brain session, how we got with this was that there's a lot of lack of knowledge. And we're very grassroots. We're a small grassroots area. So we're in all these different festivals and communities and get invited and talking that feedback from the community. They didn't know. I had somebody tell me, I didn't think Black people would get leukemia. Right? So it's a lack of knowledge and a lack of education. And that's a lot of it. And just to get people comfortable. Now, 25, 50 years ago, how they used to collect that, you know, the bone marrow through your hip, you know, they used to have to go through your hip and all this, the long needles, because this is what people heard. You know, now it's almost like giving blood, right? You know, methods have changed. So we've got to constantly be updated on the technology. So there's a lot of hesitancy around this. I believe it's from the lack of knowledge, rumors that come down. You have some religious reasons, and you have generational things, right? Because the messaging is different. You know, when I got to talk to my father, you know, I got to bust out this 25-page manual and go through everything didactically, right? This is the guy who uses paper. Now, when I'm talking to the 20-something, I need to be quick. I got to have that Instagram message, right? You know, show the picture, you swab, and then you get blood, and you save a life, right? Like, so, we have to be very, here's the challenge of Why Save a Life. We finally got a director of marketing on board, right? Again, because I'm very grassroots, right? Everybody volunteers time for free. And now we're doing this 3-prong messaging because we're talking to different groups. You have to talk to them differently. And
we also got to, break the mythbusters, the people, the DNA tracking. We always have issues with, they trying to take my DNA, they want to track me, all the other myths.
I'm so sick of that damn rumor.
Tragic, though, right?
It's the bane of my existence right now.
Right.
It's tragic, though, right? Because the genesis of it is just a lack of education and knowledge about science, right? And there's also this level of self-consciousness that they have. And so they cling on to anything that they can explain and that makes sense to them because it helps in some way to relieve their anxiety, but it's doing so much harm,
But you know what? I got to
Mhm.
say that all of that is well earned. It's fair. I get it. I get why people think everything they think because it's like, even though it sounds ridiculous to us, in terms of, a lot of the disinformation that's going on now, ever since the dawn of slavery, scientists and medical professionals have been using our bodies as anatomical material, you know what I mean, without our consent.
right.
In an ethical human experimentation, taking someone's swab or blood or genetic material feels no different than that. And even though some of the things people make up as like the lore around their conspiracies seem wild, to me, what I really hear is, well, based on the evidence, I know like America, whatever you want to call it, white supremacy, is really capable of almost anything. Look how they done did us. You know what I mean? So that's where the imagination could run wild, really.
Right, but this is where, so here's something my father taught me a long time ago. Hope is a very dangerous thing to lose, right? And so here is what I'm really, in almost everything I do now in life, is strategically giving us that hope. And so what do I mean by that? The reason why I make sure my parents taught me, and I'm making sure I teach my community about the man that developed a heart surgery, or when that movie came out, right, with Mos Def, right, where he founded the baby blue disease, and you now have I forgot her name, or it was a Dr. Kizmi that was part of the Moderna design. What it is that I want to change the story because we're not seeing our face, and I think the lack of us seeing us in this medical scientific community is also feeding into our fear and our lack of understanding and connecting and trust. And so I don't, you can, at one time in my life, I did lose hope, right? I experienced something I never thought I had to experience because of a stupid disease. And that's what I'm going to call it. Because to me, it could have been preventative, right? But that's in my opinion and my education. But then what gave me the hope? And then you sit, and I'm surrounded by the fact that we are from the mother. We were the first scientists. Mm-hmm. And a lot of scientific, from the stoplight, the streets you drive on, all the cell phone, the automatic shift, we have to really leverage and find this Black medical community and start putting the face to it. And that's really going back to your question, right, John, around how do we deal with this? Well, we don't, folks are going to trust people that look like them.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where we have to, where you see this pandemic has kind of been forcing a lot of us to step up and say, listen, I acknowledge this was done to us. You're absolutely right. I'm not even arguing that point, but right here and now, right? This is not about me and you anymore. This is about our kids. And in order for us to start changing the story, when we're diagnosed with something, this is what we have to do.
Mm-hmm. We also got to, in addition to what Niambi says, we also got to interject some type of compassion, or I want to use the word hero mentality. Because if something that, in the Black community, even when we're trying to do the bone marrow, if it doesn't affect the person, it really doesn't have a general care for it. So if they don't have any compassion to begin with, you could say, let's put a face to, let's say, bone marrow transplant. It's like with Shannon, I think it was Alvarez, Tavares. Shannon Tavares. She was the girl from The Lion King a few years ago that died. She was 11 years old. She couldn't find a match. Charlie Murphy, leukemia, couldn't find a match. You want to put faces to it. But if somebody is not personally affected, they really kind of pull away from it. And until we get or they need an incentive, let's say, to become a hero. And that's one of the things I know we do. You know, like one of the like the tools I use to say, hey, it takes 5 minutes to save a life. You know, to get somebody interested in what do you mean? By the time that happens, we have to break the myth, and that's how we kind of start the conversation. But until we couldn't do all of that other stuff, and people just have some general compassion for one another. And I don't know how we bring that to the forefront, or just have a heroes type of mentality, like, you know, for my brother, and then it's hard to move forward.
That's kind of like where our story started, I think, because our church was looking for a donor for a specific person at the time. So it was kind of like that same kind of setup at a community event. Jamal, why don't you walk us through what the process of signing up was like?
Sure. Well, like you mentioned, it was at the church event, and we go to a fairly decent sized church. So there was a lot of hope that through that population, they would be able to find a suitable donor for that particular person. I was not the match for that person, but through that donation, or through that effort, or I should say, excuse me, through that swab, because literally that's all it was, swab. That 5 minutes did affect someone else's life. I gave the donation, didn't think anything about it. And it was years later, wasn't it? It was some years later that I was contacted about a possible match. And I went ahead and took the test, and it led me on a wonderful journey of being able to have an opportunity to have an impact on someone else's life. So to one of Walter's points, I feel like I was very fortunate in that I had this activity early in my life that showed me the power of empathy and the power of caring about others. So that was how it started. And luckily, I was able to go on to the other steps.
So there's a lot of maybe confusion and fear surrounding what happens when you're selected. You know, I think people are afraid of what that procedure looks like. So can you continue to walk us down this path? You know, once you were contacted about being a match, first, how did it make you feel? Was there a level of pressure you felt? Were you worried about the procedure? And then once all the paperwork and all the diagnostic tests and everything were done, what was the experience, the clinical experience like?
Okay. Well, I have to be very forthright and honest. When they did contact me about the possible match and said, oh, well, we need you to come do this diagnostic test, I was like, no problem, I'm there. Because at the time, I did not like my job. I was traveling 4 days a week. I was on an airplane Sunday night. I had to travel to work till Thursday on an airplane back home. So I had done this for a while. So any opportunity that I could get to sit my black butt home and relax for a minute, that's what I was trying to do. So it was for a selfish reason. So sure, I'll sign up and I'll do it and just see what happens. Did the check and ended up being a 9-point match.
Wow.
At the time, I didn't know the importance of that. So I'm just like, well, it can help someone. Okay, tell me where I got to go. Tell me what I got to do, and it's on.
Can you explain that, the 9-point match part?
Well, I'm not good with all of the technical aspect, but I guess there are levels of matches that you can be. And there's a perfect match, then there's 9-point match, and I think it goes down to like what, 7, I think, or 8.
Yeah.
And you have to excuse me,
Like
Jonathan.
7 out of 8, yeah.
Yeah, and this was a very long time ago for me, but they didn't really stress the match point because I was just so adamant about doing it.
But I think for her, it was important because there had been other potential candidates for her, but they weren't willing to make a move on that because they weren't close enough match until they found 10.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the process of actually giving the donation, surprisingly enough, and this was back, I said a while back, even when they did go through my hip to extract the bone marrow, it was a little bit of discomfort. And I ain't gonna lie, I'm a big crybaby. When I get hurt, I ain't trying to hide it. And it wasn't that bad. I remember I had a little portable DVD player. I watched a bootleg movie. And by the time it was done, the process was done. The next day, I took it off work. I was a little tired, a little drained, but it was nothing in comparison to the potential of what that gift could mean to someone else. Outside of just getting that time off of work, which I actually had to ask for, and I really wanted, and they didn't give me no problem about it. That was really the hardest part of the donation process itself. All the staff were wonderful. Everyone was very kind because they understood, what I was doing. I had no frame of reference at the time. And looking back on it, it was a truly transformative gift that I was giving. No, excuse me, that I was given, not giving, that I was given.
Don't start.
Because
what are you doing?
It opens up a lot of doors in your life that when you do it, you don't even know about it.
Okay, so then the amazing thing that happened after this was that several years later, after the procedure, then he was notified again that the donor was attempting to connect with him. So do you remember what it was like when you realized that they wanted to meet?
Yeah. Once again, I was like, hey, no problem.
Wonderful.
Yeah, let's get together. I would love to hear. And well, before we actually met each other, we had many long conversations, many
we were family.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah, a lot of cherished interactions, because you really do get a sense of what that gift gave not only that person, but that person's extended family, husbands, daughters, grandchildren, neighbors, and the ripple effect that gift has to all those lives. And it was not until years later that I really got the best gift out of everything. Having a relationship with my donor, my donee, whatever, was the most special aspect of everything. And we got a chance to meet each other, and I got a chance to meet her family, extended family, spent quality time together. And that's probably one of the most cherished memories that I'll ever have in my life. It was special.
That's incredible. That's absolutely awesome.
I so love that story.
Yeah.
And so first, thank you, right? I think just thank you, right?
Thank you
for that decision. And so, why save a life? Because you matter, right? It was just really simple for you like that. That's just the simplicity of you matter. And the significance of that. So I just want to read you quote or statistic. And this is according to Be the Match, is the likelihood of diverse patients finding a match on the registry. And for African Americans, it's a 20 or Black, it's a 23% chance, just a 23% chance you'll find a match. For Asian Pacific Islander, there's a 41% chance. For Hispanic and Latino, there's a 46% chance. For American Indian and Alaska Native, there's a 57% chance. And for white, it's a 77% chance. So there was a 23% chance that young ladies whose life you saved, whose life was going to be saved. And that is the importance of why we should be committed to addressing this health inequity. That's why, because there's only a 23% chance, because the lack of awareness, compassion, or empathy or knowledge. That's why.
Yeah.
Do you find that people that are involved in the donation experience, Niambi, have opportunities like these to have interactions with community in the community care aspect? So
unfortunately, I haven't, the truth be told, Garmell is actually the first, well, he was the first in which I heard this successful story. And then around the same time, I had a friend that was diagnosed with leukemia. So all this was going at the same time. So this friend is the second person I know. He just had his transplant last month. So he's recovering, right? So these are, because we did have 2 people contacted in our registry and they turned it down. And that we had to step back for a second, because we really now, when somebody donates to registry, we have a serious conversation with them, what that means, because you don't want to, it must be devastating for a patient on the other end to hear the person said they're not interested.
Remember, they have hope on the other side of that phone call.
And so unfortunately, John, I wish I can tell you, like, I've had these, and not until this year, I've heard about 2 African-American men receiving a bone marrow transplant, or well, one man gave, and then my friend has received his. It has been really, I can tell you, that's why we've kind of re-navigated towards the bone marrow court and collection, why we've raised money. We're looking for mothers to pay for that, to kind of, to mitigate around trying to find a match, right? And so we could talk about that a little later. So it's been difficult. It's been a challenge, but I'm so reminded why Save a Life is needed. And I can tell you, when I got the phone call about my friend, we're very good friends, went to school together. I was taken back, right? And so I got in this mood and called my executive board and was like, listen, we got to do something. And luckily his family wasn't the match. It's a non-familial match. But I was talking to his family. It was, and I'm just glad to hear that he is recovering well.
That's awesome.
I have to admit, there was one part of your story that reminded me of a little tidbit of my story that I neglected to mention. My person had to fight to meet me. There was a little bit of a miscommunication or mix-up on the details of my contact information. So it took a while for her to reach out to me and find me. But when we did finally have a chance to contact and connect with each other, she shared the story about the person that they had identified previous to me, who was like a 7-point match. And how she got really excited because she had been waiting for a while. And this person, and after this long period of time, they identified this other person, the 7-point match. And she just thought her prayers were answered and she was so happy. And it was close to the holiday season. And this person decided not to do the donation because she was concerned about how that would affect her holidays. It was not even close to Christmas, but she was concerned that weeks, a month down the road, her holiday would be ruined. And so she decided not to do the donation. So that 7-point match went on down the road. And it was about a week and a half to 2 weeks later was when they identified me as the 9-point match. So God moves in funny circles.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I don't want to discount anyone's rationale for why they make the decision, but like I said, empathy and care and why you make the choices that we make and the lives that we can impact, that, I mean, we have to take that seriously. And
Garmell, I'm gonna say one of the things we do say before you do the swab or while you're filling out the application is if you're not 100% sure you want to go through with this, we trying to advise you not to do it, because once you make that call, there is hope on the other end. And if you're, like you said, this young lady was, she was believing that, hey, her prayers have been answered, and then just for somebody to say no and then give a reason why, it's really disheartening. And I was going to ask you, can you touch on one more thing? Because we do also talk about the bone marrow. Was there any cost to you? No. Right. So therefore, and that's what we tell people, there is no cost. So you don't have to worry about financial or any things to take care of it. There is no cost. You're giving someone hope and you're a hero. Like 5 minutes to save a life.
Yeah. And I think, as you're saying, that hope, just that small communication, that sliver of hope and what it did to her, when you take that away from someone, that could have the possibility to be a very tragic set of circumstances. She was very lucky. We were very lucky that we were able to find each other in a duration of time that I was able to have an impact on her life. So I'm very blessed and thankful for that. But also it just teaches me that hope, don't wait on no one. You always have to have it in your heart. It always has to be a part of you, and don't let anything stop you from going and doing what you can to help others and making sure that you're making an impact in the community that you have. Because you never know what action, what activity that you do is going to have that effect on someone else.
Also, I want to just highlight one more other thing that you said. I know it probably is not big in the grand scheme of things, but you said your church also pushed the bone marrow registry drive. And, as church goers, we believe in divine healing, but we also believe in help from other folks, because that's what Jesus said. We're here to help each other. How can you love me? You've never seen him, and I'm here. And so, that's one of the myth busters we break too, where, God not only gave us divine healing, but he also gave us compassion to help each other. We could do that. That's what we need to do. And our churches, I believe, have to be part of that front. If it's, how many churches in Newark alone, hood medicine is about 500. So we can change a community. That's just my thought.
Yeah. And now I kind of want to get into the policy aspect in terms of advocating for coverage or for cord blood banking and the approach to pursuing possible legislation to facilitate this for Black mothers. Can you share a little bit as to the efforts that you guys are actually doing now?
So there was an opportunity we wanted to follow. We wanted to see if we can incorporate this piece of cord blood banking in the coverage. And so I won't mention the bill or the legislator just for reasons. But what I have since learned, and we're trying other avenues, is that this is a very hot topic in Congress. And when you start talking about cord blood cells and tissue, right, it's something that it's going to take a little time and effort to get to garner, right, some support around this. What I can say is that, and it made sense, the reason why when incorporated, the bill that is being passed and pushed, and some of the parts of the legislation has gone through, it just made sense to wrap this around this. So I think we have to, one thing we're working on now is how to shift the conversation, reframe it, and re-strategize so it doesn't become political, right? So here's the thought, and so people don't know. So cord blood banking and collection. So basically a mother, when she gives birth, they will collect the cord blood and the tissue, the tissue, and they collect that and they store that for up to 20 years. And so what happens if you're ever diagnosed with, they've been able to use this cord blood or the tissue for about 80 different diseases. So let's say you're diagnosed with anything, they can then take that tissue and replicate it and treat, design the treatment for you, as opposed to you trying to find the match. Now you got it from the beginning. This is your genetic tissue. This is your everything. And so we had come up with that idea because of experience I had. Young woman who was like, we were talking, was like, oh, I wanted to do that for my daughter. So she had sickle cell anemia. Her husband had the sickle cell trait. And so she wanted to do the cord blood collection, but she couldn't afford it because just in case her daughter might have been, her child, her unborn child. And then she told me the story that she couldn't afford, they had to make a choice. They had to pay for the cost of giving birth or, and her daughter ended up having the sickle cell anemia trait.
Yeah.
Or sickle cell anemia. And my heart, I think, just broke, right? When I heard the story, right? I remember, I think a tear was like in my eye because in my brain, I was like, oh, wow, right? Because, and at the time I had just done research and found out that they have successfully cured sickle cell anemia patients with cord blood transplantation, sorry. And so now, to me, it's very simple. I don't think, and this is my opinion, not an opinion of Why Save a Life or an opinion of anybody else, but in my opinion, I don't think it's a manipulation of life or your body. I think you are collecting, cells that have supported the life in you for 9 months. You're collecting those cells and storing them so they can be used to help save a life, right? You're not cloning them, you're not manipulating them. However, how we have to wrap the messaging and strategy and help our local, we're probably going to have to now start locally. I was trying to, go nationally, local level, and garner that kind of support, and then have it go up through the Senate and Congress. Those are the avenues we'll continue to work through. Because that's the only way you're going to get it passed, right? The procedure, it's about $1,500 to do the collection, and it's about $2,300 to do the storage for 20 years, which comes out to about like $250 a year. So if you broke that down in terms of insurance plan, that's almost like $10 a month insurance companies would have to pay for over about $4,000. That's what it came out to by the time we calculated. So, how do you convince insurance companies, hey, why not cover the cost of cord blood banking? It's only $10 a month, right? That's better than what it's going to cost if you have to spend all these millions of dollars on cancer treatments and all this other stuff. So, I mean, we're trying to find different ways and logic, and still hopeful. And, we knew this is not a quick fight, right? Most of the people are asked to join Why Save a Life. You have to have a sense of resolve, in the sense that this is going to take a little work and effort and a little time. We're undergoing 300 to 400 years of us not being treated as human beings. And that's the other part of it, is the value. So when African Americans are valued as human beings, we probably can change the conversation also around that, right?
I think I remember when we were having our first child, Justin, we got a pamphlet for blood donation, and talked to a couple of people about it, and the impression we got, and this was years ago, this is 2007, this is back when I don't even think the American Pediatric Association was in favor of cord blood donation, right? But the impression we got was it was like a money grab, that these private places were just trying to make extra money by taking something that we would probably never even need. So I would think that's a hurdle that you have to get over, especially for a community like ours, that's distrusting of these corporate entities coming in and having play a role in our healthcare. So do you anticipate having to have those conversations or other types of hesitancy in our communities about cord blood donation? And go ahead.
Not so much. I'll be honest with you. You know what the biggest issue is? The doctors aren't talking to us about it. So this is now starting the conversation, right? So I met many women in our work who were in their 3rd trimester and they didn't even know what I was talking about. And there is a law in the state of New Jersey where by the 2nd trimester, you are supposed to be speaking to women by their 2nd trimester about cord blood banking collection. At this point, probably at the time when I don't know how old your son or daughter is, and I'm not going to date you. There probably was that conversation, but now we have there are 3 companies in which I can tell you legitimate and they do this work and they have enough. We use their educational material and they kind of join us to explain, right? Once people explain. But part of it is most of the feedback I got was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I would be very interested in it. Right. I didn't get it's so very interesting. So they don't want to swab, but they were interested in the cord blood collection. So that's what's interesting about this. And I think that's really our challenge again.
And then we have to also talk about the 2 different types of cord blood collection or banking. You know, there's the private and the public. There is a public cord blood collection, and but neither one is being talked about. However, there is a difference between public and private.
Right. So just what happens is in terms of the public that you can, if you want to, you can donate. So you don't have to keep it for yourself. You can have in certain states, New Jersey's not one, I believe it's Pennsylvania, but certain states, they will collect your cord blood collection and store it. You can donate it in the store to use it for other people. And then the private is you yourself is paying and storing for it. And so, you know, again, this is also around, this is another podcast on a different day, around the education and the importance around STEM, right? And people understanding what science truly is and why it's important. And so I think that's one podcast. I think there's a third conversation we can have around now is talking about the Black medical community, right? And garnering support for them, funding them in clinical studies, funding them in the cord blood research, funding them in the cancer research, right? That's another conversation we need to have what that looks like, right? Also, you know, I'm part of an organization in the leadership in the pharmaceutical industry, you know, having Black leaders designing clinical trials with us in mind, right? So there's a lot of different pieces to this, right? And what is that marketing access program, you know, for these cord blood companies? Are they really reaching out to our community? I can tell you we're not. And, you know, that's another conversation we want to set up with the leadership of those companies around, well, why aren't you having the conversation in the Black community about what this is, right? And you have to create this return of investment, right? With them. And so, you know, there's a lot of different pieces and, you know, you hope that different organizations can pick up those different pieces and we put it all together to move forward. But yeah, we just don't know.
And when we educate the mothers in the maternal care part, right?
Yeah, so we're starting that program where we're gonna now try to connect with doulas and the you know, OBs who WHYSaveALife is and why we're pursuing this and create some awareness around yeah, you know, you can cord blood collection, right? We'll find some way for you to get it paid for. And/or I found out that some companies, if you have a child that already has been diagnosed with one of those 80 diseases, you won't have to pay for that service, that collection.
So let me ask you, how do you see the impact of this potentially improving maternal care equity? We've had, I think, an inequity for some time. How would this position us to kind of create a little bit more of an equity between how we're treated and other races are treated here?
I think it would help address it, right? I think it would change the conversation. If you know, I'm very perplexed around what, you know, when a woman becomes pregnant, at the end of the day, we all, when, you know, all of us us two that have experienced this, right? Okay, when you get pregnant, you're gonna have the same emotional feelings, all this stuff, right? There's no, you know, you got to get the same test, everything. So are you telling me, so I think we now have to challenge these doctors to say, do you have an inherent bias that when you see a Black woman who's pregnant, right, that you don't provide them the same care? So I think to your point, when we have this difficult conversation, it will help us, right? We hurt, we cry, we give birth, we're scared. I had a complication in my pregnancy. Well, luckily all my doctors are people of color.
Yeah.
And so I had a complication. It's the first time in my life I thought I was going to die. And my doctor created a plan and a strategy. And, obviously my daughter's here, she won. And so, but that's because my doctor treated me like all her patients, or like her, like I was a human to her. I wasn't just this old Black girl like complaining, oh, she's just a patient, she's this and that. But no, I was a patient. And to your point, to answer your question, when we finally have this difficult conversation, right, with this medical community and say, hey, this is your bias. You literally talked about this with these patients over here who happen to be white women or even Asian women, but didn't even have the conversation because you assumed either we are faking it or don't have the money or whatever it is. It's going to help us, right?
Do we know that there is this inequity going on? Do we know this, or do we need to do better about socializing this within the communities that we live in?
Good
No,
question.
we don't know.
That's the
Some of
answer,
us
right?
Do we know this? No.
No.
So it's like, so it's something, I don't know, John, whoever said it, I don't know who said this. But when I talk to people, tell people, you can change your doctor, right? And you get this, what? Like, so
Right.
you're sitting here like, okay, listen, because what I laugh about when, with our folks, you mess with your food or your money, you going somewhere else, you going to the manager, you calling all this stuff. So now what I'm saying is this is your life and your doctor, and you telling me you don't know you can change your doctor or advocate for yourself. So to your point, this is one of the tools we have to teach. What does advocating for yourself looks like?
Exactly.
A friend or family with you. If you're scared to have this conversation, then I'll have it for you. There's an organization down in Philly, oh my goodness, it's a cancer organization, and it basically, he started by coming African American. So what happened is people Cancer Hope. Was it Cancer Hope? I'm sorry if I'll look it up, but basically it started because African Americans couldn't get to their cancer treatments. So he just started going right to the cancer treatments, and out of that, he's had a whole foundation. He now has a whole center down in Philadelphia. Doing awesome things. Okay. And the point was that now these people are surviving because now they have an advocate coming with them.
Yeah.
What do you think, like, a potential role for genetic counselors could be with advocacy around the cord blood banking for this purpose? Because I feel like, well, obviously there's probably disparity in how many, Black women get referred to genetic counselors in the first place, but that's like one touch point that already kind of has a role like that, you know what I mean, in terms of facilitating that discussion. Have you thought about like ways to leverage those people?
Wait, so leverage?
Like genetic counselors.
Oh yeah, so now you're gonna have to talk a little bit about that, because I didn't even realize with the genetic counselors. I know we brought that up, right? And it's interesting because I didn't realize I talked to a genetic counselor. Look, I'm even.
Because you have two on your team, right?
We do.
Right. Yeah.
We have two of them.
Yeah. So that was when we had that conversation. I thought it was interesting because I feel like what a great opportunity, right, to have a lot of conversations about your family history during that genetic counselor. So they asked all this other stuff, right? But I even think, do you have cancer that runs through your family? Like, what a great opportunity while you're pregnant and do blah, blah, blah. And that really could start a conversation. And that is probably around, the training or retraining of that protocol, right? Updating the protocol. And I don't know how you start with that process. But to your point, I think that's a great opportunity. Now, I don't necessarily know what genetic counselors actually do outside the fact that I was getting asked all these questions and they were making me nervous. Like, I just want my baby to be healthy. Like, all of these questions aren't helping me, right?
I think you're like,
help our senior population too. The ones that
The what?
don't advocate. I help our senior population for those that, like I said, develop things later on in life and like, hey, what happened? Oh, Uncle Larry had had cancer, and Granddaddy had cancer. Oh, by the way, as a genetic counselor.
Yeah, we never use, I think part of our lack of understanding of these things is because, we didn't grow up with those words in our households, right? If you had diabetes, you had the sugar, right? You had cancer, it was, leukemia, it was like bad blood, right? So, we have to start talking about these things and educating people about these things and the language that correlates to what they're going to hear in their medical professional's office, right? They have to understand that, you mentioned earlier that Black people didn't think they could get leukemia. And, that's one of the cancers that kills, blood cancer that kills Black people the most, right? So, we have to do a better job of making people comfortable having these conversations about terminology that, they're not really going to be comfortable hearing or listening or understanding.
Yeah, have you ever read the book Outlier?
Yes.
And do you remember that story about there was this young boy going to the doctor and the mother was saying, make sure if you have any questions for the doctor, ask the doctor, blah, blah, blah. And then there was another mother going to an appointment and the mother was like, don't say anything, just say yes, And what it revealed was that the mother that was telling the son to ask the questions, it was a young Black boy, it was a Black woman with a young Black boy, and the other person was a woman. And this was an outlier. But the point he was trying to make was, what happens if you start young and answer this question, then people get comfortable, right? The whole point he was saying, so now is, 20 years later, he's going to be this healthy, whatever, go to doctors. And, and so for me, like my husband, and like he said, he was drinking sodas. Well, see, what happened is my mother had blood pressure. My father was a diabetic. So I've always been aware since I was young. My mother I always went to my doctor's appointments, my dentist. And so I'm not scared of the doctors because she started when you're young. And to your point, I think we're going to have to accept the fact there's some folks that we're not going to be able to catch. But if we can retrain how we are starting young, this younger generation to understand and all of the stuff, you start getting comfortable and you change these conversations. Because many of us that are on this call right now is that we have been exposed to something. The reason why how we got into this field or the science or whatever, there was something we were exposed to and ingrained to us very young. And it carried out. So it didn't matter what was being thrown at us to tell us what we couldn't do. We did it regardless, right? And so somehow we've got to, even this topic with our health, we've got to change this conversation. If this doctor tells you, I can't figure out, or you just making it up, then you're going to find something should click in your head and say, I'm no longer going to deal with this doctor. I'm going to find somebody else to help me.
Or if you just, if you just feel something in your gut that tells you, this isn't clear, I don't understand this, I've asked questions, I'm not getting the answers I want, that's a sign for you to go and ask those questions to somebody else. Try to find somebody who can, maybe they can explain it to you in a different way.
Right.
And I think you mentioned something earlier and it reminded me, we have this socio, cultural thing in our community where you're not supposed to talk about what happens at home to anybody else, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why, we have, molestation happening, with the uncles who are sitting right next to us in Thanksgiving and nobody wants to talk about it because we can't, talk about family business and whatnot. Well, people carry that into the doctor's office, right? You don't talk about what's going on with you or with your family. You just go there, get your checkup, and you go home. And we got to break that cycle, that mentality, because we have to make sure people understand. You only got this body for so long, And if you don't take care of it, you don't get it taken care of. You're shortening the amount of time you have in that vessel.
You're right.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, you're right. I mean, it's create that foundation. So if you take care of yourself now, it's going to have a positive impact later, right? Yep. And that's, that saying youth is always wasted on the young, right? Listen, I really believe one of the reasons I believe I had a healthy pregnancy, I was training for triathlons. I was doing triathlons because I was an older mother. So I was at risk, right? And I believe that I was eating a certain way. I had a regimen. I think I strengthened my body as an older woman because I was older, not saying old, but having this child. And I think the reason we survived, got past that situation I was in, was because, to your point, I built a foundation. And it was 3 years or 4 years of that. And we don't understand the significance of that.
Yep.
Right. Your husband created a stress-free environment.
Give him his credit too.
Oh my God. Yeah, we are so glad that we finally got a chance to have you guys on for this important conversation. I know it won't be the last time we have, these discussions, because the work you guys are doing is so important, it's so special. But I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to drop some final thoughts on a community about cancer awareness. And I'll start with you, Jamal. Any thoughts you have on the experience?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to both the other panelists for your efforts and your care for others. I just can't even begin to articulate the value that you do bring to your community. And after the experience that I had, and how it's shaped not only my life, but how my kids view helping others, and how I hope for them to engender that in their lives as they go on. This is truly, truly a wonderful opportunity that I think more of us need to share. More of us need to be aware of this. More of us need to understand that it hits us more than anybody. So any efforts we're doing to bring this to light, I applaud you, I thank you, and I just hope that we can touch another life.
What about you, Walter?
I could go. I just want to say, I was inspired this summer and this fall, the beginning of the fall, with the Plainfield Public Health Department. And one of the goals was to vaccinate 5,000 people this year. This in the health office and the director of the health department. And that just gave me hope and inspiration that, if they could put out an initiative to vaccinate 5,000 people, man, we could continue this fight to what our tagline says: "Beat one cancer one life at a time." And, I might not see it with my eyes at the end of the day, but our work will continue where by the end of time, we'll have educated, we'd have had uplifted, so we could have people have the quality of life. Like, there's no need to live long if your quality of life sucks. And so we're at a point now where we could educate and we could move forward. Our quality of life is just like, what the Bible says, like something like this: we reign in life. Mm-hmm. And our life, we're supposed to have life abundantly. And if we continue this work, let's have abundant life and a good quality of life.
Amen. What do you want to leave with the audience, Niambi?
So again, thank you. And I think I was so inspired by the story of the Hudsons. And so I would ask if people can seriously think about making that choice that Garmell Hudson did to save a life. If you can step outside yourself to save a life. And why? Because you matter, we matter. This is our time to speak up for ourselves, whether it be in education, whether it be in politics, whether it be in health, right? And at the end of the day, my mama used to tell me, if you ain't got your health, you ain't got nothing else. It doesn't matter about the money or anything else. And so I am encouraging my community to step up and fight for your life.
And that's that.
Niambi, why don't you tell everybody how they can follow and support WHYSaveALife Foundation?
Sure. So you can find us on Facebook, WHYSaveALife Foundation. That's just put that in, you'll find us on Facebook. We actually are launching a page very soon called Stories of Hope. So we also have that page that give the opportunity of caregivers and survivors and champions and patients to talk about their story. You can also find us on LinkedIn. We have a page, WHYSaveALife Foundation. And you can go to our website, whysavealife.org, or you can email us at info@whysavealife.org. And you'll find all that information on our website or LinkedIn or at Facebook. So we definitely are seeking volunteers. And we're also looking for anybody who wants to register. Wink, wink.
We'll drop those links in the chat for everyone.
Definitely.
Okay.
This has been absolutely awesome. I just want to thank you all again for joining us this evening. I want to thank the folks for tuning in to this Facebook Live live stream. At Hood Medicine, we want to bring you trusted individuals to provide you with the facts and information to allow you to make the decisions necessary to keep you and your family safe. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to support our effort, to donate to our cause, and to find out about our next events. You can visit us at hoodmedicine.org or at hood_medicine on IG and Twitter, Hood Medicine Initiative, one whole word, on Facebook. And thank you again. Stay safe and please get vaccinated and mask up.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.